The world is filled with many mind-boggling, disturbing stories that would leave you lost for words. Some of these stories end up being forgotten over time, and some need to be forgotten because of how upsetting they are. This story fits into one of those two descriptions, but which one is it? Welcome back to the Told You Another Story channel. In this video, we will be looking at the gruesome story of Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage was born in 1823 as the first of 5 children to Jesse Eaton and Hannah Trussell Gage of Grafton County, New Hampshire. Very little is known about his upbringing and education, but he is confirmed to be illiterate. Physician John Martin Harlow knew Phineas in his early life and described him as a perfectly healthy, strong, and active young man. 25 years of age, nerve-bilious temperament, 5 feet 6 inches in height, average weight 150 pounds, possessing an iron will as well as an iron frame, muscular system unusually well developed, having had scarcely a day's illness from his childhood to the date of his injury. With a doctor's statement as solid and descriptive as that, you can believe that Phineas was the best of health, both physically and mentally. A man with all these physical attributes born in a time like that will most likely end up doing laborious jobs, which is precisely what Phineas did for a living. In July 1848, Phineas started working on the construction of the Hudson River Railroad near Cortlandt Town in New York, and by the later part of that year, he was a blasting foreman, probably an independent contractor, on railway construction projects. He was considered a competent and skilled foreman, and his employers described him as a shrewd, smart businessman, very energetic and persistent in executing all his plans of operation. He even commissioned a custom-made tamping iron, a large iron rod used in setting explosive charges. A man this proficient in his work wouldn't strike you as the kind of person to make mistakes in said work. However, accidents happen. They sometimes happen for unknown reasons and unexpectedly. That is why they are called accidents. Little did Phineas know that he was about to be the victim of one of the most gruesome accidents of all time. On September 13, 1848, Phineas was directing a work gang as they blasted rock while setting up the roadbed for the Rutland and Burlington Railroad located south of the village of Cavendish, Vermont. This work included digging a deep hole into a boulder, adding blasting powder and a fuse, and then using the tamping iron to pack sand, clay, or other inert substances into the deep hole above the powder, so as to contain the blast's energy while directing it into the surrounding rock. This might sound complicated, but to a pro like Phineas, this is a simple job he does every day. September 13th was supposed to be no different till it was. Phineas was doing this exact same job around 4:30 p.m. that day when he got distracted by his men working behind him. He looked over his right shoulder and unconsciously brought his head into line with the tamping iron and blast hole. As he opened his mouth to speak, the tamping iron sparked against the rock simultaneously, and the blasting powder exploded. Launching from the hole, the tamping iron, 3.2 centimeters in diameter, 1.1 meters long, and weighing a little over 13 pounds, entered the left side of Phineas's face in an upward direction, just before the angle of the lower jaw. Continuing upward and probably fracturing the cheekbone, the rod passed behind the left eye, through the left side of the frontal lobe of his brain, then finally out of the top of his skull through the frontal bone. The tamping iron landed point first about 80 feet away, covered in blood and brain. Now, many of you with very imaginative minds can probably picture this, but not fathom how a person can experience that and come back from it. Well, Phineas survived it. He was thrown on his back and had brief convulsions of the arm and legs, but spoke some minutes later, walked with little support, and sat straight in an ox cart for the 3/4 mile ride to his lodgings in town. Newspaper reports even claim that Phineas made an entry in his time book, the record of his crew's hours and wages. During the journey, about 30 minutes after the incident, physician Edward H. Williams found Phineas sitting in a chair outside his lodging and was greeted with one of the greatest understatements of medical history. The physician Williams said, "When I drove up, he said, 'Doctor, here is business enough for you.' I first noticed the wound open the head before I aligned for my carriage, the pulsations of the brain being very distinct. The top of the head appeared somewhat like an inverted funnel, as if some wedge-shaped body had passed from below upward. During the time I was examining the wound, Mr. Gage was relating the manner in which he was injured by the bystanders. I did not believe Mr. Gage's statement at the time, but thought he was deceived. Mr. Gage persisted in saying that the bar went through his head. Mr. Gage got up and vomited. The effort of vomiting pressed out about half a teacup of a brain through the exit hole at the top of the skull, which fell upon the floor. Physician Harlow took over the case an hour later and said the picture presented was to one unaccustomed to military surgery, truly terrific, but the patient bore his sufferings with the most heroic firmness. He recognized me at once and said he hoped he was not much hurt. He seemed to be perfectly conscious but was getting exhausted from the hemorrhage. His person and the bed on which he was laid were literally one gore of blood. The injury was so bad that Phineas was swallowing blood, which he regurgitated every 15 or 20 minutes. The two physicians shaved the scalp around the rod's exit, removed small bone fragments, coagulated blood, and an ounce or more of protruding brain. Physician Harlow replaced two large detached bone pieces and closed the wound with adhesive straps, leaving it partly open for drainage. The entrance wound in the cheek was loosely bandaged for the same reason. He also applied a wet compress, a nightcap, and additional bandaging to secure these dressings. He also dressed Phineas's hands and forearms, which were burned along with his face. According to Physician Harlow, Phineas's recovery was long, challenging, and uneven. On the morning after the accident, he lost control of his mind and became decidedly delirious, and by the fourth day he was rational again, which lasted a week. 12 days after the accident, Phineas was semi-comatose, rarely speaking unless spoken to, and answering only in monosyllables. On the 13th day, Physician Harlow noted, failing strength, coma deepened. The globe of the left eye became more protuberant, with fungus, deteriorated, infected tissue pushing out rapidly from the internal canthus, as well as from the wounded brain, and coming out at the top of the head. By the 14th day, the Physician Harlow stated, the exhalations from the mouth and head are horribly fetid. Phineas's friends and family were expecting his death and even had his coffin and clothes ready. Fortunately, Physician Harlow didn't give up on him and managed to save Phineas's life. On the 24th day, Phineas managed to raise himself and took one step to his chair. 1 month later, he was walking up and down stairs and about the house. Physician Harlow's prognosis at this point was Gage appears to be in a way of recovering, if he can be controlled. Unable to reclaim his railroad job, Phineas was a kind of living museum exhibit for a while at Barnum's American Museum in New York City. Advertisements were also seen for public appearances by Phineas, which he may have arranged and promoted himself in New Hampshire and Vermont. For about 18 months, Phineas worked for the owner of a stable and coach service in Hanover, New Hampshire. In August 1852, Phineas was invited to work in Chile as a long-distance stagecoach driver, caring for horses and often driving a coach with a heavy load drawn by 6 horses on a Valparaiso-Santiago route. After his health began to fail in mid-1859, he left Chile for San Francisco, arriving in a feeble condition, having failed very much since he left New Hampshire, according to his mother. In San Francisco, he began to improve under the care of his mother and sister, and found employment with a farmer in Santa Clara. In February 1860, he started having epileptic seizures and lost his job. As the seizures increased in severity and frequency, he continued to work at various places, though he couldn't do much. At 5 a.m. on May 20, 1860, Phineas had a severe convulsion, and the family physician was called, and bloodletting was done. The convulsions were recurrent during the subsequent day and night, and he died in status epilepticus late on May 21, 1860. He was buried in San Francisco's Lone Mountain Cemetery. Thank you for watching this video. Hit us up in the comments section and give us a thumbs up if you liked the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos.